Most men think they lack discipline. But that's not the truth. The truth is, they wake up every day without a system. And without a system, even the strongest man becomes weak. Look at your own life for a second. You don't fail once a week. You don't fail once a month. You fail in small moments, every single day. When you wake up and check your phone immediately. When you delay what you know you should do. When you let your mood decide your actions. It doesn't feel like failure. It feels normal. That's the problem. Because what feels normal is slowly destroying your control. And here's what most men never realize. You don't become unstoppable in one big moment. You become unstoppable in the quiet, invisible decisions no one sees. The way you sit with discomfort instead of escaping it. The way you move when no one is watching. The way you control your attention when your mind starts drifting. This is where your power is built. Not in motivation. Not in hype. But in repetition. The Stoics understood this long before us. Men like Marcus Aurelius didn't rely on feelings to guide their actions. They built structure. They trained their mind the same way a warrior trains his body. Every day. Without exception. And that's exactly what most men today refuse to do. They want results without routine. Control without discipline. Respect without consistency. It doesn't work like that. In this video, you're going to see something different. Not motivation. Not generic advice. But 10 daily habits that will slowly turn you into a man who doesn't break under pressure. Who doesn't chase. Who doesn't lose control of his own mind. A man who becomes calm, precise, and dangerous in the right way. But here's the catch. These habits are simple. And because they are simple, most men will ignore them. Don't be one of them. If you stay until the end, you won't just understand these habits. You'll see exactly how to live them every single day. And once you do, going back to your old self won't even feel possible anymore. If this is the kind of clarity you've been missing, make sure you stay with this, because the next part will show you why most men lose control before their day even begins. Most men don't lose control in dramatic moments. They lose it quietly, before the day even begins. It starts the second they wake up. There's no awareness. No intention. Just reaction. The alarm goes off. And the first thing they do is reach for their phone. Not because they need to, but because they can't tolerate stillness. In that moment, they've already lost. Because instead of choosing how their day begins, they let the world decide for them. Messages, notifications, other people's lives. Their attention is gone before they even get out of bed. And they don't think it matters. But it does. Because attention is the foundation of control. And once you lose it early, everything else starts to collapse. You become reactive. You move based on mood, not intention. If you feel good, you work. If you feel tired, you delay. If something distracts you, you follow it. No structure. No resistance. No control. This is why most men feel like they're always trying, but never actually moving forward. They think they have a motivation problem. They think they need more discipline. But the real problem is much deeper. They've trained themselves to escape. Every time discomfort appears, they avoid it. Every time boredom shows up, they replace it. Every time something feels difficult, they switch to something easier. And over time, their mind becomes weak without them realizing it. Because strength is built by staying, not escaping. But modern life makes escape easy. Too easy. One tap, and you're distracted. One scroll, and you forget what you were supposed to do. One video, and an hour disappears. And the worst part? It feels harmless. It feels like a break. It feels like you're just relaxing. But what you're really doing is training your brain to run away from effort. Day after day, moment after moment, you're reinforcing a pattern. Right finger discomfort equals escape. And that pattern becomes your identity. That's why when it's time to do something that actually matters, you hesitate, you delay, you negotiate with yourself. Not because you're lazy, but because your mind has been conditioned to avoid resistance. This is where most men get stuck. They try to fix their life by adding big goals. Wake up at 5 a.m. Hit the gym every day. Work 10 hours straight. And it works for a few days. Maybe a week. Then everything falls apart. Not because the goals are wrong, but because the foundation is broken. You can't build discipline on top of a reactive mind. You can't create consistency when your attention is constantly being stolen. And you definitely can't become unstoppable when your behavior changes based on how you feel. The Stoics saw this clearly. Men like Epictetus taught that the problem is not the world. It's your response to it. You don't control what happens, but you always control how you react. And that's where everything begins. Because if your reactions are uncontrolled, your life will always feel unstable. But if you can control that first moment, that first decision, that first impulse to escape, you start to take your power back. Not all at once, but gradually, quietly. And that's how real change happens. Not through intensity, but through awareness. Not through force, but through control. In the next part, you're going to understand the principle that separates men who stay stuck from the ones who build absolute control over their mind. And once you see it, you'll start to realize why everything you've tried before never fully worked. Most men don't lose control in dramatic moments. They lose it quietly, before the day even begins. It starts the second they wake up. There's no awareness, no intention, just reaction. The alarm goes off, and the first thing they do is reach for their phone. Not because they need to, but because they can't tolerate stillness. In that moment, they've already lost. Because instead of choosing how their day begins, they let the world decide for them. Messages, notifications, other people's lives. Their attention is gone before they even get out of bed. And they don't think it matters. But it does. Because attention is the foundation of control. And once you lose it early, everything else starts to collapse. You become reactive. You move based on mood, not intention. If you feel good, you work. If you feel tired, you delay. If something distracts you, you follow it. No structure, no resistance, no control. This is why most men feel like they're always trying, but never actually moving forward. They think they have a motivation problem. They think they need more discipline. But the real problem is much deeper. They've trained themselves to escape. Every time discomfort appears, they avoid it. Every time boredom shows up, they replace it. Every time something feels difficult, they switch to something easier. And over time, their mind becomes weak without them realizing it. Because strength is built by staying, not escaping. But modern life makes escape easy. Too easy. One tap, and you're distracted. One scroll, and you forget what you were supposed to do. One video, and an hour disappears. And the worst part? It feels harmless. It feels like a break. It feels like you're just relaxing. But what you're really doing is training your brain to run away from effort. Day after day, moment after moment, you're reinforcing a pattern. Right finger discomfort equals escape. And that pattern becomes your identity. That's why when it's time to do something that actually matters, you hesitate. You delay. You negotiate with yourself. Not because you're lazy, but because your mind has been conditioned to avoid resistance. This is where most men get stuck. They try to fix their life by adding big goals. Wake up at 5 a.m. Hit the gym every day. Work 10 hours straight. And it works for a few days. Maybe a week. Then everything falls apart. Not because the goals are wrong, but because the foundation is broken. You can't build discipline on top of a reactive mind. You can't create consistency when your attention is constantly being stolen. And you definitely can't become unstoppable when your behavior changes based on how you feel. The Stoics saw this clearly. Men like Epictetus taught that the problem is not the world. It's your response to it. You don't control what happens, but you always control how you react. And that's where everything begins. Because if your reactions are uncontrolled, your life will always feel unstable. But if you can control that first moment, that first decision, that first impulse to escape, you start to take your power back. Not all at once, but gradually, quietly. And that's how real change happens. Not through intensity, but through awareness. Not through force, but through control. In the next part, you're going to understand the principle that separates men who stay stuck from the ones who build absolute control over their mind. And once you see it, you'll start to realize why everything you've tried before never fully worked. Most men think discipline is about forcing themselves to act. It's not. Discipline starts much earlier than that. It starts with attention. Because before you act, you focus. And wherever your focus goes, your behavior follows. This is where most men lose control. Not in their actions, but in what they allow to take their attention. Think about how your day actually plays out. You sit down to do something important, and within minutes, your mind drifts. You think about something irrelevant. You remember a message. You feel the urge to check your phone. And without even noticing, you follow it. That's the problem. Not the distraction itself, but the fact that you obey it automatically. You don't question it. You don't resist it. You don't even see it clearly. It just pulls you. And over time, this creates a dangerous pattern. You become a man who cannot stay. You can't stay with discomfort. You can't stay with effort. You can't stay with one task long enough to master it. You keep moving. Not forward, but sideways. Always busy. Never sharp. The Stoics understood that attention is power. Men like Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded themselves, you become what you give your attention to. Not what you intend. Not what you plan. But what you repeatedly focus on. And that's why controlling your attention is the first real act of discipline. Not forcing yourself to work harder, but choosing what you allow into your mind. Because once something enters your attention, it starts influencing you. Your mood shifts. Your thoughts change. Your energy drops or rises. And suddenly, you're not in control anymore. That's why small things matter. What you look at first thing in the morning. What you consume during the day. What you return to when you feel bored. These are not random choices. They are training. Every single time you follow a distraction, you're teaching your brain. Right finger, this is acceptable. Right finger, this is normal. Right finger, this is where we go when things get hard. And your brain learns fast. It starts expecting it. It starts craving it. Until eventually, you can't focus even if you want to. This is how men lose control of their mind. Not through one big mistake, but through thousands of small, unconscious decisions. But here's the shift. Control doesn't come from eliminating distractions. That's impossible. Control comes from noticing and redirecting. Catching the moment your attention starts drifting, and bringing it back. Again, and again, and again. It sounds simple, and it is. But it's not easy. Because this is where resistance lives. This is where your mind pushes back. It tells you, just check for a second. Just take a break. You'll come back later. And if you listen, you lose the representative. Because every moment of attention is a repetition. Just like a muscle. Every time you stay focused, you get stronger. Every time you drift and follow it, you get weaker. There's no neutral. You're always training something. That's why men who become unstoppable don't rely on motivation. They build attention control. They decide what deserves their focus. And they protect it. Aggressively. quietly, without needing to prove anything. And over time, this changes everything. Work becomes deeper. Thinking becomes clearer. Emotions become calmer. Because your mind is no longer scattered. It's directed. And once your attention is under control, something powerful becomes possible. You can finally build structure. Not random actions. Not bursts of motivation. But consistent behaviors that shape who you become. This is where most men finally start to change. Not when they feel ready, but when they install daily habits that reinforce control every single day. In the next part, you're going to see the beginning of that system. Not theory, not motivation, but the first habits that start rewiring your mind into something far more dangerous and far more stable. This is where everything starts to become real. Not ideas, not principles, but behavior. Because if you don't translate control into action, you go back to who you were. And most men make the same mistake here. They try to change everything at once. Wake up earlier, work harder, cut distractions completely. And for a few days, it works. Then they collapse. Not because they're weak, but because they're trying to force intensity instead of building structure. The Stoic approach is different. It doesn't overwhelm you. It rewires you. Slowly. Deliberately. Daily. And it starts with one simple shift. Right finger, you don't need more habits. Right finger, you need the right ones, repeated without negotiation. So here's the first habit. Not the most exciting, but the one that changes everything. Habit 1. Control the first 10 minutes of your day. Before your phone. Before the world. You sit in silence. No stimulation. No input. Just awareness. You observe your thoughts, without following them. At first, it feels uncomfortable. Your mind will jump. It will look for something to grab. That's the point. Because this is your first rep of control. You're telling your mind, I decide how this day begins. Most men fail here. They reach for their phone within seconds. And just like that, their attention is gone. Don't do that. Win the first 10 minutes. And the rest of your day becomes easier. Habit 2. Delay your first impulse. Throughout the day, you will feel the urge to escape. Check your phone. Switch tasks. Avoid something uncomfortable. Don't act immediately. Pause. Even for a few seconds. This is the exact principle you learned earlier. Control versus reaction. That pause is where you build power. Because every delayed impulse weakens the old pattern. And every instant reaction strengthens it. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to interrupt the automatic behavior. Again and again. Habit 3. Do one hard thing early. Not 10 things. 1. Something you've been avoiding. Something that requires effort. You don't wait until you feel ready. You do it while resistance is still there. Because that's the training. Most men try to warm up their day. Easy tasks. Low effort. Comfort first. And by the time they reach something difficult, their energy is gone. Flip it. Do the hard thing first. And everything after feels lighter. Habit 4. Reduce unnecessary input. Your mind is not tired from doing too much. It's tired from consuming too much. Information. Noise. Content. Most of it useless. Every piece of input takes your attention. And the more you consume, the less control you have. So start cutting. Not everything. Just what doesn't serve you. Less scrolling. Less random videos. Less noise. Create space. Because in that space, your mind starts to stabilize. At this point, most men already feel resistance. Because these habits are simple. But they remove something people are addicted to. Ease. Comfort. Constant stimulation. And that's why most men won't do them. They'll understand them, agree with them, and then go right back to their old patterns. Don't be that guy. Because if you can lock in just these first habits, you'll already be ahead of most men. And we're not even halfway yet. If you're still here, it means you're not just watching, you're actually thinking. Stay with this, because the next habits will take this from basic control to something much more precise. Now here's where it goes deeper. Because control is not just about starting your day right. It's about how you move, how you think, and how you handle pressure in real time. The next habits will show you exactly how to do that. And this is where most men break. Or where they become unstoppable. At this point, you already understand something most men never do. Control is not about forcing yourself to act. It's about how you relate to your own mind. But here's where it gets deeper. Because even if you build habits, even if you control your attention, there is still one thing that can break you. Expectation. Most men don't suffer because life is hard. They suffer because they expect life to be easy. They expect things to go their way. They expect people to behave how they want. They expect results to come quickly. And when reality doesn't match those expectations, they lose control. Frustration appears. Anger builds. Motivation drops. And suddenly, all the discipline they thought they had disappears. This is where the Stoics separate themselves completely. Men like Seneca trained themselves to expect difficulty. Not in a negative way, but in a prepared way. They understood something simple. Right finger life will challenge you. Right finger people will disappoint you. Right finger things will not go as planned. And instead of resisting that, they accepted it fully. Because when you accept reality as it is, you stop wasting energy fighting it. Think about how much energy most men lose every day. Complaining internally. Resisting situations. Wishing things were different. All of that is wasted effort. It doesn't change anything. It just drains you. But when you shift your perspective, everything becomes lighter. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And you start asking, how do I respond to this? That one shift changes everything. Because now you are no longer a victim of circumstances. You become an operator. Someone who moves within reality, instead of fighting it. And this creates a different kind of strength. Not loud, not aggressive, but stable, calm, unshaken. This is the kind of man who doesn't break under pressure. Because he doesn't expect comfort. He expects resistance. So when it comes, he's ready. And when you combine this mindset with the habits you're building, something powerful happens. You stop relying on perfect conditions. You stop needing motivation. You stop waiting for the right moment. You act regardless. That's what makes a man dangerous. Not emotion, not intensity, but consistency under any condition. But there's one final step. Because understanding this, and even applying it, is not enough. You need to integrate it into your identity. Into how you live every single day. Not occasionally. Not when you feel like it. But as a standard. In the next part, you're going to see how all of this comes together into a system you can actually live. So you don't just practice control sometimes. You become someone who lives it. Up to this point, you've seen the pieces. Control your attention. Delay your impulses. Act without waiting for motivation. But none of this matters if it doesn't become who you are. Because most men don't fail from lack of knowledge. They fail from inconsistency. They apply discipline occasionally. They follow habits when they feel like it. And then they wonder why nothing sticks. This is where integration begins. Not adding more, but locking in what matters every single day. And to do that, you need to complete the system. Habit 5. Finish what you start. Most men live in fragments. They start things, then leave them unfinished. Not because they can't do them, but because something else grabs their attention, and they follow it. This destroys your focus. It trains your brain to seek novelty instead of completion. So start small. If you begin something, Finish it. Even if it's simple. Even if it's boring. Completion builds discipline. And discipline builds identity. Habit 6. Control your environment. You don't rise to your intentions. You fall to your environment. If your surroundings are full of distractions, you will be distracted. If your environment supports focus, you will naturally perform better. So stop relying only on willpower. Remove what pulls you away. Simplify your space. Reduce triggers. Make discipline easier by design. This is not weakness. This is strategy. Habit 7. Limit emotional reactions. You will feel things. That's normal. But you don't have to express everything you feel. Most men react immediately. They speak too quickly. They show frustration too easily. They let emotions leak into everything. That's a lack of control. Instead, observe first. Let the emotion pass through you without acting on it. Silence is power. Calm is power. And the man who controls his reactions controls the situation. Habit 8. Build tolerance to discomfort. Discomfort is not the enemy. Avoiding it is. Every time you choose comfort over effort, you weaken your mind. Every time you stay with discomfort, you strengthen it. So lean into it. Not recklessly, but deliberately. Cold mornings. Difficult tasks. Moments where you want to quit. Stay. That's where growth happens. Habit 9. Reflect daily. At the end of the day, most men distract themselves. They don't think. They don't review. They don't learn. They just move on. That's why they repeat the same mistakes. But one simple habit changes this. Reflection. Ask yourself, what did I do well? Where did I lose control? What will I improve tomorrow? This is how you sharpen your mind. Quietly. Consistently. Habit 10. Keep your word to yourself. This is the final one. And the most important. Because everything else depends on it. If you say you'll do something, do it. No negotiation. No excuses. Even when it's small. Because every time you break your word, you lose trust in yourself. And once that trust is gone, discipline collapses. But when you keep your word, you build something rare. Self-respect. And from that, everything else grows. Now look at the full picture. These are not random habits. They are a system. A system that builds control, step by step. Morning awareness. Impulse control. Focused action. Environmental discipline. Emotional stability. Daily reflection. This is how a man becomes consistent. Not perfect, but reliable. Not intense, but steady. And over time, this consistency creates something powerful. You stop thinking about discipline. You stop forcing yourself. You simply operate at a higher level. Because this is who you are now. And once it becomes your identity, going back feels wrong. But there's one final piece. Because becoming unstoppable is not loud. It's not aggressive. It's something much quieter and much more dangerous. In the final part, you'll see what that actually looks like. In the real world, at this point, you don't need more information. You don't need another strategy. You don't need motivation. You already have everything you need. The difference now is whether you apply it. Because nothing you've seen here is complicated. There are no secrets. No hidden techniques. Just simple habits. Done consistently. And that's exactly why most men will fail. Not because they don't understand, but because they won't repeat. They'll try for a few days. Maybe a week. Then life happens. They get distracted. They lose focus. They fall back into old patterns. And slowly, they become the same person again. But not you. Because if you've stayed this far, you've already separated yourself. You didn't come here for entertainment. You came here because something in you is tired of being out of control. Tired of reacting. Tired of starting and stopping. Tired of knowing what to do. but not doing it. And now you see it clearly. Control is not something you find. It's something you build. Daily. Quietly. Without needing anyone to notice. And the man who commits to that process becomes different. Not overnight, but inevitably. He becomes harder to distract. Harder to shake. Harder to break. Not because life gets easier, but because he gets stronger. This is what unstoppable really means. It's not speed. It's not aggression. It's not intensity. It's stability. It's the ability to move forward, regardless of how you feel, regardless of what happens, regardless of who is watching or not. And when you reach that level, something interesting happens. You stop chasing. You stop forcing. You stop needing validation. Because you know, you're in control. And that changes how you walk, how you speak, how you make decisions. People notice it, not because you say anything, but because your presence feels different. Calm, grounded, certain. That's power. Not loud, but undeniable. So from this point on, keep it simple. Don't try to change your entire life overnight. Pick a few habits. Lock them in. Repeat them daily. And let time do the rest. Because if you stay consistent, this won't just be something you practice. It will become who you are. If this helped you see things differently, subscribe and stay close to this kind of thinking. Because most people will never train their mind like this. And that's exactly why they stay stuck. But you don't have to. You already know what to do. Now it's just a matter of doing it.